Hey there, guys, and welcome to another episode of Hamilton Likes to Draw. Today I'm going to be showing you a painting I did of Ryan Gosling. I did this recently, and I'm doing it again in open canvas, so we're going to be watching it play back my movements. I'm going to be talking about some techniques about drawing digitally. So here we go. And one of the things I want to talk about really quick is something that tends to, I think, mess people up when they're just starting. And the thing is that when you just start into digital, the thing, especially if you want to paint, that you need to remember is to not overwork yourself, or I should say to not do the same thing over and over and over again. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is overdrawing their drawing before they paint. Now notice that what I've done here is I've done a very, very simple sketch, an extremely simple sketch. And now I'm immediately going into painting, and I'm attempting to work as smart as I can. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm laying down a sample bit of color underneath my quick sketch that I have I sketched very small and then immediately bumped up to a huge size, and now I'm painting full size on. And I'm painting at 3000 by 4000. I think a little bit later I'm going to increase that to 3000 by 4200 because I needed a little extra space on top. And don't be afraid to change your canvas size as you're painting. But the point is to always start with the smallest amount of work possible and then hop right into the actual work. Now, some people like to start straight with shapes and colors, and I'm a sketch artist. I like to sketch first. But if you're a sketch artist as well, make sure that you sketch first, that you don't draw first. Make sure you don't just spend an inordinate amount of time drawing. Now, the other thing I'd like to mention is that just recently, you might notice that for a while there, my layers had two layers. I had my sketch layer on top and my painting layer underneath, and now I have basically laid them down on top of each other, and so they're now one layer. Now, this allows me to use some of the darkness from my sketch as the darkness in the actual painting. It means that I'll have to do a little bit more work later painting over my lines, my big gross lines that were there. But it means that I'll also be able to use some of the values that came out of that combination of painting and sketch together. But it also means that I'm painting on one layer. And when you're painting, it's probably best to paint on one layer for the most part. And you're going to see later, as I go along, that when I actually get into the hair, I actually do change this change up my setting a little bit, and I have three layers eventually of hair pieces and some other things and a couple of other layers. But for the most part, my face painting is all on one layer, and this really allows you to not get confused about what layer you're on. I see a lot when you have flat colors, it's a lot easier to have many layers or have a sketch layer and a color layer and all that kind of stuff. But when you're painting, you really want to be pulling values, and open canvas makes it really easy to pull values by right-clicking, or if you have a pen, it's probably a button click. But it allows you to right-click and just grab the current color you're on. If you're in Photoshop, you can alt-click when you're painting to pick whatever color you're currently highlighted over. But there are a lot of tools like that that just allow you to pick the color on and then paint right on. And when you have multiple layers, it can get confusing, and you can confuse yourself about what layer you're currently painting on. So it's a good idea to always attempt to paint on one layer when you're painting. Like I say, if you're doing flat colors or lines or something, you can do whatever you want. But when you're painting, it's nice to be able to pull colors from near you, and it's also nice to, when you're doing that, have just one layer that you're pulling from and painting onto. So at this point I am painting. You'll notice that I've been slowly painting out all of the hair stuff that I had earlier. That allowed me to still have the sketch in place, but then just paint it out whenever I needed to. And I'm basically painting out all the hair because I want to later then do the hair on a separate layer as a very detailed, fine line drawing, which I'm doing right now. And that way then, if I want to change some of this stuff, I can just erase it. It's much easier to erase this kind of detail than it is to paint over and get all of the colors right. So because I have all of my base painted in I really wanted to keep that base there and then just draw the lines on top of it. So here I am drawing in all of these hair marks on a separate layer, you'll notice, so that I can, if I want to, and there you can see I just did, I can just erase the lines that I want to erase, and there's not a big problem there. At this point, I'm going into the hair, which is normally my favorite part to draw, but what I've realized is it's my least favorite part to paint. I think that I love drawing strands of hair. I think it's so fun to make those the hair shapes and to just draw lines. I mean, lines are what I like to do, and so hair is great when I'm drawing. But oh, hair is not the best. Hair is not my favorite thing to paint. And you'll see that I'm trying to do it with lines, but eventually I have to get into more painterly techniques. And I've, I've always preferred being a line artist, and you can see that eventually I just sort of get through it. Uh, but all of this is again done on a separate layer from the original painting, so that it's essentially like I've drawn the bald head and I'm now painting the hair on top of it, so that the hair can, when it needs to be erased, just be erased and not have to be painted over. And yeah, that's that technique. At this point, I'm just detailing. Yeah, look at that detail. Oh, okay. So now I'm doing the jacket, and I'm just laying in a large flat color. And you guys, if I was smarter, and I thought about this later, I would have just made this with shapes. Now, right now, I'm painting this in, and it's mildly painstaking, and I probably should have just laid down these large flat areas of color with shapes, which is something that you can do in Photoshop and Open Canvas and most other programs. And it's at this point that I'm going to use a gradient in the background. The gradient I'm working with here is a subtle light blue to dark blue, and you can see that as I go along I try flipping it back and forwards, and the thing I'm trying to go for is a sky color. And the thing about a sky color is that generally speaking the sky tends to get uh, uh, lighter at the bottom of the sky and darker at the top. So you can see here what I've done is I've settled on something that has a light bottom and a dark top, and that simulates more of a sky look. Not exactly a sunny sky, or perhaps not looking at the sun. So this isn't like noon. This would be like later on in the day when the sun is still out, but you're looking at a different part of the sky. And if you look out at the sky, you'll notice that the bottom is lighter than the top, and that's because obviously the further up you look, the closer you're getting to looking at stars. And here I am throwing in a couple of extra details, and now I'm just kind of trying to mess up the background. The background was a little too even, and so I'm just throwing in some big colorful bubbles, and I'm about done with this. And a really big key to illustration is knowing when you're done. And Open Canvas has now told me that I'm done, and I actually thought it was pretty funny looking back on this how weird people look without eyebrows or with half of a mustache or something like that. And that's my Ryan Gosling. It was a lot of fun doing this. I don't get enough chances to paint in this technique, which is like no lines, just straight paint. It was a lot of fun doing this. So thank you for watching. And I hope you enjoyed this edition of Hamilton Likes to Draw. Later.